Hi guys, it's Kristen Dalton here. Hope everybody's doing well and that you are blessed. So we've had a lot of requests for the video to discuss the feasts of the Lord. And so as we are coming up on
Here it is.
So as we are coming up on the spring feast, there's no better time to tackle this subject, because our hope, and I think the Lord's hope, and the whole reason for this is that He will be able to draw you in time for Passover.
Yeah.
This also, we want to address people that are very intrigued or are looking for your kingdom spouse. You're very intrigued by those videos because you're on your own journey. Mm-hmm. The Lord's giving you a word. You're wanting to understand, maybe how to hear from the Lord better, how to walk in that, how to get to your kingdom spouse, how to not miss it, all of those things. This is where it all starts. It starts in the feast of the Lord, and that's where it started on my journey. That's where it started on his journey. Had I not done it, had he not done it, we wouldn't be here.
Yep.
So, stay tuned. Watch these videos. We're going to do a series because we're going through a book called The Spring Feasts. This is through Kurt Landry Ministries. It's our church. And this material is incredible. It's very easy to understand, and it's going to go from the history of the spring feasts and through everything. There's going to be questions at the end of each chapter. We will put on the screen, and you can stop the video, answer it. It's going to help you understand what to do when God gives you instruction. It's going to help you to understand the way you think about the Lord. Everything. You're going to learn so much through this. So I encourage you to please watch every one of them, because I know you'll take something from it.
Yeah.
And again, I think the Lord's going to use this to call a lot of people into the spring feast this year. And that's where your life changes.
Yeah. And if it's something that you guys are actually wanting some of these books yourselves, we're going to go ahead and link down below where you can find them from our church's website. They've also got other things in here as well as fall feasts. They've got ones that are 7 steps to emotional healing. We've got one that is about tithes and offerings, and lastly, we've got one on victory and spiritual warfare. So, that one's incredible,
amazing. We just went through it, and it is.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, we're gonna be busting these out pretty quick because we want to get to that one, because that one's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but this is where you go from blessing.
It's still gonna be good, we promise.
Yeah, so from blessing to abundantly blessed. That's what you find in the feast. And so I want to share a quick testimony of how I came into the feasts and kind of how that journey started for me. So 4 years ago, this will be my 4th season of celebrating all the feasts. So we do the fall feast and we do the spring feasts. And just a quick word on that. And so I was still a single girl, okay? And I was living alone in my little apartment and just doing the Lord's work, keeping my head down. I was actively, just seeking to be delivered from generational curses, from everything that I, had just been through. And, I was just walking super, super close with the Lord, and definitely dealing with my fair share of warfare and all of these things. Well, I spent all of my spare time during that season just in the presence of the Lord. I don't know. It was an intense time. It was wonderful. But anyway, so just kind of setting that kind of where I was at. But it was a very lonely existence because I really kind of shut everybody out. I didn't have a church. This was in 2020. So we were during the pandemic, y'all. And it didn't really affect me in any way. That when everything shut down, I started to come out a lot more because I felt a lot more comfortable. That's a whole other story. But for me, that season was a big blessing. Like, it didn't affect me at all because I was already living such a life of solitude kind of with the Lord and just really seeking his face all the time. I just wanted what he wanted for me and I didn't want to miss it. So I didn't do anything that could cancel that out. And so at this point, because of my walk with the Lord and really wanting to weigh what is important to him, what should I be doing? What should I not be doing? I literally got to the point where I didn't celebrate Christmas. I did celebrate Thanksgiving, but I didn't do anything else other than Resurrection Sunday. And that was it, because I wanted to know that I wasn't in agreement with something that God wasn't in agreement with. And I know that some people, I celebrate Christmas now. We love it. It's wonderful because at the end of the day, we all understand some of the roots, but what other day do you celebrate the birth of Christ? Even though we all know he wasn't born on December 25th. Yeah. That's common knowledge. We get it. But it is still a day to celebrate our friends, to celebrate our family, and to celebrate Christ. And so, but at the time, I just took it all down to bare bones and was like, Lord, I want to be pleasing to you.
Yeah. So that's what the basis of putting God's name above every other name looks like. And that's not to say that's a guideline or lifestyle to go off of, but it's my personal story.
That's what I had to do to know that I was doing the right things. Right. Is just take it all away, and the Lord, I'll let you put it back in.
Right.
And I remember when he started putting it back in and gave me the joy of being able to celebrate, holidays again without worrying that maybe I wasn't doing the right thing. But before he would do that, he would want me to do his holidays.
Yeah.
And so because I had emptied that part of my life and anything I had known, it was coming up close to Passover. And I got an email from Kurt Landry Ministries to my phone because I had signed up and I had done some prayer with them like 2 years prior. And I would get these emails. And it was about Passover. And I knew in that moment that God was saying, I want you to do Passover.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know anything about the Jewish feasts, but I knew it was my next step. I absolutely knew that was where God was calling me to. So mind you, I had no church. I didn't really have anybody I was already being scoffed for celebrating or observing the Sabbath on Saturday from the people that I did kind of have around me at the time. I was defending that 24/7 because I knew God had called me into that. So he had slowly had put me in steps that put me in alignment with the Jewish roots of our Christian faith.
Yeah.
So I get that email. I know God's calling me into it. So all on the sly, I go to work and then I go to the store and I get everything. Because in the email, there was everything to make your first Passover Seder because nobody was doing it in church at the time. Everybody was doing it at home. So they were going to have an online service. Perfect. And so I knew that I was going to do this. So instead of having a lamb shank, I got a chicken bone,
Sure.
And I roasted it on my little gas stove. And I made all the elements, I remember I hadn't bought wine in years and I bought wine to make the little pear and apple mixture. I made my own matzah, and then I set the laptop up and I put my feet under the Lord's table.
Yeah.
And had my first Passover by myself. And the second that the worship came on, it was just I just started to bawl.
Yeah.
And I bawled through that entire Passover.
Mm-hmm.
It just flowed. And I felt God's presence so strong. And I knew that something was different. Something had changed. And that things just weren't going to be the same. And I knew I was in the right place at the right time. So I just want to share that with you guys because I want that's going to grab you. God's going to speak to you through that if this is your season to start doing something different. And from there, I would do Shavuot. And from there, continue to do the fall feasts. And by Shavuot, the church that I had done that through, I found out was actually 20 minutes down the road from me. So that's funny.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this church was local to me.
Right.
So this awesome experience I had, I was and I told the Lord, I was okay, I said, when this stuff lifts, I'm going to go try that church.
Mm-hmm.
But I was scared because I had so much church hurt and so much shunning and stuff. I was terrified to go. Yeah. But I knew, I was no, if they actually believe the way I believe, I've got to at least go check it out. Mm-hmm. And that's where I met him. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My entrance to Passover was in 2012. I was coming in hot off an overdose. And the thing is that's just one of those times where God had brought me to a point of that rock bottom. And, we're kind of that big proponents of that sometimes you have to let God take you down to the dust in order to kind of bring you back up to life.
You gotta be humbled and broken sometimes. And that's not for everyone. No. Some people learn a lot easier than we do. Yeah. But I know that that's where the Lord was able to speak to me. And that's where the Lord was able to speak to him.
Yeah, because the problem that I had at the time is I wasn't teachable.
Right.
You see, I had grown up in a Christian school. I had... had parents who were religious, very spiritual. We had lived in like all these other times where we were at revivals all the time, things like that, and still ended up in places where I was kind of doing my own thing, and the world kind of bit back, if you would. But the part of it is that coming into that Passover right after I'd been taken down to the dust, and that's kind of. It's basically kind of why you look at the name of the channel now. It says Dust to Life. And this was one of those moments where Passover was that transformative part where it actually brought me back to that life. Sometimes God needs to actually bring you back into that spot where he can actually make you teachable again and actually reform what's in you to make what's better and actually make it to where you can actually bring your own, that plan into that kind of fruition. And I think that that's something I really needed. But whenever I came into Passover at 2012, it was an experience like in church I'd never had before. I mean, this was a feast, and it was a feast at Shangri-La, and it was something that, I've never actually been to one of those.
This was much more fancy than my first one.
It's okay. But the thing of it is that that's something that God had set aside for me to be able to be there. There was only about 60 people that were there, and God had chosen me to be one of those. And it was something at that part of it where I remember that as Rabbi was going around and laying his tallit on every one of the people that were in there, it was just something that I felt the Lord prophesying through him, obviously to me. But it was something that I felt that the words that were coming from Passover were directly from God. Mm-hmm. And even being unfamiliar with kind of what that looked like or knowing the teachings or the Jewish roots, because this is my first time that I had actually gone to Passover or to this church in general.
Was that really?
It was one of them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I guess you did tell me that today.
Yeah, my parents had started going there after the tornado in Joplin in 2011.
That's weird that both of our first experiences with House of David was at Passover.
Yeah,
way different years, but that's pretty cool because it shows you that that God's doing something.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I bring you in at Passover.
Yeah.
Because Passover is where you get the instruction, y'all. People looking for your kingdom spouse. That's where you receive the instruction.
Yeah.
And then at Shavuot, you receive the empowerment. And I won't get ahead of anything, but it's powerful because you do hear from the Lord at Passover.
Yeah.
You feel from him. You hear from him. He's in everything. To this day, not to cut you off.
No, you're good.
It is the most powerful thing I experience in church is Passover. Yeah. I have a playlist on my Spotify for Passover. And because it's songs that they'll play, and I feel it all over again because it's so powerful. Yeah. And I remember the Passover before we got together, like the last Passover before we got together. But I already knew that was my husband, but we hadn't talked or anything yet. But it was I just remember, in that part in the Bible where it's Paul's like, I'm about to be poured out like a liquid offering, Mm-hmm. That's how I felt. That's the only way I can describe what was happening with me was I was a liquid offering being poured out. And it just felt like everything in me was just, and it was like my heart was just out there.
Yeah.
And it was so incredible. And I crave it.
Right.
I look so forward to Passover.
We look forward to it every year.
Oh my gosh. And then our first Passover as a couple was last year, right? It was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it was.
It was.
And that's the first time I experienced it as the banquet style because of the pandemic. And so they couldn't do the food and all that stuff. And so it was the first year that they actually felt like they could cater it in and set the places and have the names. And it was enchanting.
Yeah.
And we were seated at the head of the table. And we were going through so much warfare at the time.
Oh, we were getting
beat
It
was intense because that is something you will experience. If you notice that the warfare in your life gets a little higher right about this time, well, that's because Passover. Passover's right around the corner. And the enemy, if you are doing that, you are already in the feast, the enemy wants to do anything he can to make you crawl to that table or not show up at all.
Yeah.
He doesn't want you showing up in one piece. So, I mean, it's a little brutal. We've been dealing with our own stuff right now.
Yeah.
You know, but we see it as an opportunity. We just got done praying because I feel like God is going to bring up, he's going to may allow an attack, you know, or allow things to happen to bring up certain things in you that need to be dealt with before Passover.
Yeah.
Because he's going to give you the instruction and then you're going to get empowered to walk forward with it. And whatever baggage is holding you down, whatever stronghold is in your life, any soul tie, anything that God's like, this cannot come in the next season. No. Well, he's going to let whatever needs to happen kind of happen to bring that up to the surface to such an extent where it's like, you're going to have to sit and pray that one out. Yeah. You're going to have to get to the root of that so he can deal with it. He can heal you and you can be set free. So much to that, but it's so exciting.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Anyway, your story.
It's the part on it. It's just kind of going in the fact of that at Passover is whenever you get a seed deposit in you. And the thing of it is that the enemy never going to work harder than whenever it's talking about seed time and harvest. And the thing is that right now in that first part of it where seed's getting laid in the ground, that's Passover. That's where God's delivering an instruction to you. It's coming from God. It's one of God's appointed times and seasons. And the thing is that in that time of it, it's something that's relevant for today. It's not something that was just a historical event. It's not something that was just in the Old Testament. It's in the New as well. And it's something that basically was said continue forever.
Yeah, it never said it was going to be cut off, ever. And that's how the enemy has robbed the church, partially of their authority, of their covenant rights, of your covenant promises, your protection, your provision, is because people aren't celebrating Passover. They're not doing the instruction of the Lord that was never said to be done away with. Yeah. We're not condemning anybody. I mean, at one point, none of us did it, you know. It's just a place that God brings you into. It's just knowledge. You know, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. This is the knowledge. Yeah. And you'll know if this is for you. And you'll know if it's your season. Yeah,
look at just in the themes of what this is initially, look at this and think, just think about it for a second from a big picture view. Why would the enemy hate it? The thing is, it's something that you're learning about your identity and in God's thoughts for you. Yeah. You're learning about your authority of what he's getting to you. But the other big part of it is that you're learning about the power of the blood. And the thing of it is, if you don't understand the power of the blood, you are useless spiritually. Because the thing is, it's not by your power, it's by God's power. Yeah. And the thing is, if the enemy can work a little bit harder than he has been recently, just to work a little bit harder on you, keep you a little bit more pressed down, a little bit less, a little bit more tired, having you get a little harder time that you don't even want to question whether or not you should go to this thing or make this part of your, just kind of make the effort of the time or to spend the money to do it. The thing is that you kind of miss out on sometimes what you're able to learn from what God thinks about it. And it's something, this is one of those seasons where the enemy works really hard to keep anybody he can from going to put their feet under that table. It's apparent. And the more you spend time with it, the more you realize that that's something that happens every year.
I can tell that this Passover is huge.
Yeah.
And so with that, it has been a huge pushback. But I've been able to feel it for weeks. I'm like, there's something really big God's going to do this Passover. Like, this year's gonna be big, and he's there. I don't know. I can feel that there's an establishment that's happened in us because we kind of, I don't know, but I just feel like when you come into a new covenant with someone, that kind of everything that you did separate doesn't really matter anymore. It's what you do now together in covenant, and you almost kind of start from the ground up again. And I really felt that way when we got married. Like, it was almost like we just kind of got brought back down to kind of like where we've been. And that's not necessarily true. I'm just telling you kind of my vibe on it. My feelers on kind of where that goes. And I feel like we're at that point where now we've established that credit in heaven as a couple.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I had established it as me. He'd established it as him. But now we've walked through several seasons of establishing that as a married couple. And that carries a lot of weight. Yeah. And I feel like this is where we are. It's like an establishing season. with the, with Passover. So I feel like God's just gonna do something incredible, and I'm anticipating it so much. I'm so excited. So we want other people to be excited because this is where it begins. This is where it began for us. And to kind of give you that timeline, ladies. So I did my first Passover online, and then I was at Shavuot for in-house.
And that's, for a few people, it's about 6 weeks later.
Yeah. So you get the instruction, you get the empowerment. And then that following Shavuot was when, if you all have watched our Kingdom Spouse, like I knew who my husband was, when he did the like googly big eyes, that was Shavuot of that following year.
Yeah.
So I had been at House of David for 1 year. And then we got together that summer. And then the next Shavuot was us as a married couple, right? And then this Shavuot, our baby's due.
Yep.
Okay.
On the feast itself.
She's due on it's a 3-day feast. She's due the middle of it.
Yep.
She's due the second day. So God doesn't, I can't make this stuff up.
No.
That is how God works, because we are on his calendar, and these are moeds. Yeah. These are appointed times and appointed seasons. And when you get in sync and you get on God's calendar, he's going to lead you to the right people. He's going to put you in the right places, and you're just going to flow in it.
Yeah. Whenever you get on God's calendar, the thing is that God starts operating in a completely different way.
He does.
We've got plenty of people, and honestly, within the church itself, even as far as babies being born,
we have the most fertile church, and everybody gets married.
Here's the other thing, though, is that everyone has babies on feast days.
This is true. We have a lot of Passover babies.
It's the part of it where it's really funny, because you can almost expect due dates by the upcoming feast, and it's the spring or the fall.
Isn't that cool?
And the thing is that we've had babies that were born in the house on, I believe it was on Passover, one on Rosh Hashanah, or the Feast of Trumpets. I don't know. But the thing is, there's about 6 or 7 babies that have been born within like a 2 or 3 day window.
We have a baby that's about to be born, and her grandparents think that she's going to be born on Passover. She's due a month before I am. And then our baby's due on Shavuot. So prime example, what's happening right now in this season. And so that it's just interesting. And then how many people have been married in-house at House of David? I know of 3 right up the top of my head. Yeah. And I don't even know everybody that goes there, because so many people travel, you know, have been members for years, but you may not see them but twice a year. Right. So just to kind of tell you, but it's not because of the church. I mean, it is, but it's because of the teaching, and it's because of
it's alignment.
It's alignment. It's because they're aligning themselves with God's calendar and with God's desires for their life. Right. A complete submission of, I will do your feast. I will do the offerings. I will do the alms. I will do all of these things that are requirements for these covenant blessings. And and so from that comes marriage and babies.
Right. And if anyone's ever curious about, they're saying, I'm too far away, I could never go to this thing in house, they do a live stream on Friday nights as well. It's 7 o'clock Central Time. We'll put the link as far as it's the same website. They do it on YouTube, they do it on Facebook, I still think, perhaps at this time. But at least through most of these, there's a couple different ways you can live stream it as well to be able to kind of be there if you can't be there in house.
Right.
But if you're ever able to,
and you also may find a church in your area, and you may be one of the very blessed people that God has put something close to you. We know a lot of people that have moved to be closer to ours. Yep. But God's got a plan. So, but it starts with putting yourself in alignment and taking that step forward.
Exactly.
So we want to share that with you. Now we can get to the book. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go, this has 12 chapters. These are really easy to digest. We're going to just, because we did the testimony, we don't want to make this too long. Yeah. We're going to do the intro, and at the end of the intro, there are questions. We're going to put questions up on the screen, and then we're just going to give you time to answer that. We're not going to answer them with you because we've already been through this, but we're just going to leave you with those questions. Sure. And then we're going to probably do maybe 2 or 3 chapters at a time after that. Probably 2 to make it very digestible.
Probably 2. I don't think we'd want to go, too far.
So just so you kind of know what to expect. But we hope you will hang in for the whole thing, because this is going to change your life.
I agree.
Yep. All right.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to be reading from the book here initially. So if it's something that you kind of miss any part of it, just feel free to record back to it. You'll be more than happy to
let them do that.
Do that.
Do kiss, man. I just like
okay, so,
I give him a hard time.
my mouth doesn't
so
work
sweet.
as
no,
fast
it does.
as my mind.
It does. He's just sweet.
But
so he wants to be accommodating to you.
Sure. But what we'll do is it says, what if there were ancient mysteries within the Old Testament that not only pointed to Yeshua's first coming, death, and resurrection, but also contained blessings just waiting to be unlocked and decreed by believers today.
Okay, and then I'll read this. So what if, so this is just the intro, God poured divine instruction into believers that empowered them to take kingdom dominion and authority according to the Lord's will.
And then what if that instruction revealed their identity as co-heirs with Christ, that gave them the authority to trample on serpents, scorpions, and the power of the enemy? Would we respond to God's invitation to come to him as he released these blessings and instructions?
The invitation is to meet with him at Passover and Shavuot. These are the spring feast appointed times, or moeds, observed by the Israelites for thousands of years. Jesus and the early church also recognized them. When observed today, heaven's windows are open, allowing believers to experience more of God's goodness. There is a deeper revelation of our deliverance from death and an understanding of our kingdom purposes.
Sure. So the next part's just kind of some purposes over the, purposes of what the spring feast and why we're kind of doing this Bible study. One is we're kind of leading up to the spring feast, kind of where we're talking, where we're recording this right now. It's still a few weeks away from Passover, so we wanted to kind of get a few of these out just to kind of give people a starting point if it's something that they're curious about it and they want to kind of start getting on that schedule
God
with us.
is wanting to call you in.
Right.
This is how you find out about it. This is going to pop up on your YouTube feed. This is going to harass you day and night until you watch it. That's why.
But,
and then you have to understand why.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I really feel like God's going to use this.
Right.
So we're just being obedient, y'all.
So the first part of it is that Passover and Shavuot are still relevant. It's not something that is just something that's a believer's spiritual heritage, but it's still actually pertaining to the church today. And so the verses that it uses to kind of justify that part is that if Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, such as in Hebrews 13 and 8, and as well that God cannot lie, such as in Numbers 23:19, as well as if we're grafted into Israel and now partakers of the fatness of the olive tree, such as in Romans 11:17, and God commanded these feasts to be observed throughout the generations in Exodus 12:14. And lastly, Shavuot was the giving of the law and the birth of the church from Leviticus 23:17 and Acts 2:1-4.
Wow.
Then, if that's the case, then why should we not celebrate these on God's calendar? Because what we want to do is discuss the richness of our heritage, and we want to align our bodies, our souls, and our spirits with the Lord's. And so if you are to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. And that's in Galatians 3:29.
Yeah.
So what are you going to be able to expect whenever we're doing this study of yourself?
Right. Well, I think one of the big takeaways as of this point right now is just understanding like where you're seated, like with Christ. How do you have the rights to these things? And if you're somebody who feeling you're not walking in authority, or feeling like you're not being empowered, or feeling like, where is my prosperity?
Yeah.
Where is my protection? And it's like, why don't I, why whenever I, try to take authority over something that I know is not of God, why does it not go? Why does everything just not go the way that the Bible says that it should?
Yeah.
It's because there's missing pieces. And because people have not been taught in churches about that. Either it's a New Testament believing church. We don't believe the Old Testament. Don't look at that. Don't look at that. Because there's freedom in that. But the thing is we look at the entire Bible. All of it's relevant. All of that is the living and breathing Word of God. Mm-hmm. And it is the instruction. That's the Torah. Yeah. It's the instruction. And then you got the New Testament where it's Jesus walking it out. Yeah. And so it's all relevant. And you have been grafted in. Yeah. You've been grafted into Israel, and you are Abraham's seed. this concerns you. This involves you. This is yours to have. So
yeah, and the part of it is the understanding that Jewish and Gentiles walking together and walking out covenant as one new man is New Testament revelation. And it's something that's actually living out Bible prophecy, is understanding that that's something that having Gentiles coming in and worshiping alongside with the Jewish roots of the faith at that point, is that this is your spirit, this is the spiritual heritage that you have.
Absolutely.
Without any of these things, Christianity wouldn't have ever existed.
Right.
And that's something to see a part
Jesus
of this is
Jewish.
That you...
Jewish Messiah.
Yeah, in a Jewish culture, in Jewish times.
He wasn't, American.
No.
Live in the United States. It was like, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. And that's a part of it, that understanding that Passover is a part of your heritage. And I think that's a good part of it, a starting point as well.
So what to expect from the Spring Feast biblical study? Passover. Passover is a remarkable part of your spiritual heritage. Mm-hmm. In this part of the study, you will discover the history of Passover, the symbolism of Passover, how to celebrate Passover as a believer, the counting down of the Omer. Counting down of the Omer is the 50-day period between Passover and Shavuot. In this part of the study, you will discover how to prepare your heart for the release of the instruction that comes at Shavuot. Oh, I thought we got the instruction at Passover.
It is.
The empowerment
it's the empowerment at Shavuot.
Okay. And then Shavuot, the Hebrew word for weeks, is commonly referred to as the Festival of Weeks. God commanded the celebration of Shavuot at the conclusion of the counting down of the Omer.
Yeah.
In this part of the study, you will discover the history of Shavuot, how to celebrate Shavuot as a believer, a call to reclaim. At the end of the study, we will examine how the enemy has come to kill, steal, and destroy your spiritual inheritance. When you understand how the dark principalities of this world have operated, you will begin to see the past physical and you will begin to see past the physical and into the spiritual, being confident of your future. In this part of the study, you will discover how the enemy has attempted to remove the Jewish roots of your faith, steps you can take to reclaim and activate the promises. At the end of each section, you will be asked to reflect on what you have learned through applicable scripture, and then will be given the guided questions to continue your study.
Yeah. So there's basic 4 sections. We're going to be kind of going through each one of them just over a couple chapters at a time. But if it's any of that sounds like it's something that kind of relates to your story, where you're at right now, this is going to be basically what's for you.
So we're going to I'm going to read the questions, but then we're going to put them up on the screen for you. And so we hope you're following along. That was just the introduction, but we don't want to make this too long, and we don't want to give you too much at once. Yeah. So the first question, there's 4 of them, and we'll put them up on the screen, but just so we kind of go through that together. How do you view instruction? Mm-hmm. I feel like this is going to reveal a lot of things to a lot of you, because I know so many of you are hungry. You're hungry for the Lord. You're hungry to know what He's saying. You're hungry for the things He has for you. So this is going to go beyond the feast, and I think this is going to really help God reveal things about you and about Him to you. Yeah. So how do you view instruction? And then the second question is, what does the Bible say about God's instruction? And then there's scriptures to look at: Proverbs 12:1, Proverbs 19:20, 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17, and Hebrews 4 through 12. The third question is, what does it mean to you that God invites you to meet with Him during Passover and Shavuot? And then the fourth is, why do you think God appointed times to... Why I messed this question up earlier. You do the fourth question. I can't say it right.
I think it actually may have a typo. Why do you think God appointed times 2 on His calendar to observe the feasts of the Lord?
So
it's okay.
It wasn't just me.
But basically, why do you think He has appointed times on His calendar that He says for us to observe these feasts?
Yeah.
So
write your questions down. Get a notebook. Get a pen for this study. Again, there's 12 chapters. Take some time. Write out your answers, and then we're gonna start on the actual first chapter, and we'll go from there in the next video. And so we're hoping to compose all of those together so we can have them out to you quickly, because we need to do this before Passover. Yeah. Because We want you to have an understanding and to be equipped to walk into Passover if that's where God's calling you, without fear, and understanding the importance of it and how much it changes your life.
Right.
It was a big piece to my puzzle that was missing, and then there was another piece.
Yeah.
And with these two pieces, both of us are on the right track, and we don't have to worry about the future. Of course, we have times where we do, but we don't have to, because we know that we are in covenant with the Lord and we're in proper alignment with him and we're on his calendar. Yeah. And so we won't miss anything.
No.
As long as we show up and we're obedient, we won't miss anything. No. So there's a piece that comes just from that, of knowing you are on the right track. You are being pleasing to the Lord. You're doing the right things, and he's going to bring to you all of the promises and all the desires of your heart. So I have no doubt about that, because we both walked it out firsthand.
Right, and there's nine blessings. We'll talk about it later, of Passover itself, that are if-then statements. So if you show up at Passover, if you honor the Lord's feasts, then you get the blessings that come with Passover itself. And those are things that you can speak and recite within the courts of heaven. You can pray that over you. You can basically say that as evidence of saying that I attended. I did what the Lord asked me to do. I'm in alignment with his feasts, his times. And you can actually use that information in a way of actually being able to deal with spiritual warfare later as well.
Absolutely, because you can recite those. Yeah. It's just like you use the word of God. You can use the blessings of Passover that you claim every year. And if you want to know what those are, watch the next video. Stay with us through this, because we're going to share with you what those are. Right. And it's a big deal, and it changes everything. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we're going to stop there. We don't want to make this too long. But we pray this is a blessing to you. Pray about it. Do the study. Stay with us. If you're looking for your kingdom spouse, if you want to draw closer to the Lord, if you want to be in sync with him, if you want all these things, this is the beginning of it.
Right.
And you won't miss anything. Yeah. So
and if you guys have any questions as well, feel free to write in the comments below. We're going to have our links to anything else that we kind of feel like is relevant at the moment. But to you. If it's any questions that you guys have, feel free to post them. You can answer the questions in the YouTube comments if you want to. That'd kind of be interesting. But you can also have completely personal as well.
Absolutely.
If it's something that you want to do that personal, that's all right. So however you guys feel about that, I think that could be a fun way to start this out, though. And I hope you guys are well.
And I just want to say welcome and thank you to all of our new subscribers. We really appreciate your support, and we're just so thankful for all the comments. We try to always reply back. Sometimes I'm not great at it, but always like to do like a little heart. But we read every one of them, and they mean the world to us. And we just thank you guys, and we just pray that you'll stay with us, keep growing with us. And because we have so many incredible things to share, and just to help equip you to kind of walk forward with the Lord in the way that we have, and just to share that, we were freely given it, so we're really going to give it. And so we just pray you're blessed, and we will talk to you soon.
See ya.
Bye.